Mr. Madam Speaker, we think that it is not a new case coming from immigrant people, for example, because you are a minority in a certain state, for example, you are not 100% feeling welcome, and you feel like you need more best accommodative coming from government, for example. That's why we think that these motions, for example, the moment when you live in ethnic enclave, it will create the best atmosphere for you to grow and develop your children as a parent of color. There will be two arguments on my speech. First thing, I'm going to talk about why live and raise children in an ethnic enclave is the interest of parents of color, right? First, we will going to characterize of parents of color. They immigrate from their country because their country is no longer able to provide enough welfare. For example, they need money because their country is already in rock bottom. The business is rely on drug culture, for example, if you're coming from Mexican and such, right? That's why they have no other choice but to immigrate to get a better job for better salary and better life, right? But what will going to be happen? Because their hope in this developed country, for example, the moment when they move out in another country, there will be bigger job field for them in those developed country that will give them better salary. They will have better living standard with the better educations and such stuff, right? So if the questions why they move from their country is still live in ethnic clothes should not be the questions, right? As a first immigrant as a first immigrant, you were always been living under oppressions, right? Because you were as a parent and you have grown within that community. You were being said in taking the rights of Americans or white, you know, whether it's the quota of the jobs or educations, healthcare, and other welfare, right? Despite you were already becoming the legal living citizens in that stage, right? You were as a parents have gone through a lot from the society. That's why we don't want their kids to grow up the same things, right? That's why we as parents are going to make sure our children live within this ethnic enclave. And then what is the problem in status quo? We understand that despite their children is legally a part of citizens within the country, there are quotas given by the government for them to go to public school or to live in a neighborhood that are not an ethnic enclave. But what could we have in status quo is that despite there are the existence of this welfare given by government still not able managing, you know, government is not able to managing the case of oppressions and such, right? Especially for middle to lower class people, because there are the existence of tension or discriminations between whites to people of color, right? Despite because of your accent probably, or because of just the way you look, for example, they feel like you were taking their quotas of their educations and so on and stuff, right? Even worse, when you were economically unstable, you were being labeled as a thief and etc., right? When the fact that your parents, you as a parents already give the best, the best for your children, right? And that our kind of atmosphere of neighborhood that we do not want our kids grow with, right? That's why living and raise children in ethnic class is the interest of these parents, right? Because why? First, you have the same culture that would be so much easy for people to understand, and there is no misunderstanding and so on stuff, right? Because what happens in status quo is that when you grow with your culture, there will be misunderstanding because they don't understand your culture. For example, how the way we raise our children, you know, maybe that for Asians, for example, that we are still strict and so on stuff, and these whites, for example, will going to label you for being abusive for your children when in fact you were not. Or maybe the way you eat, for example, your foods are different with people of white, for example. That's why it will going to be so much better when you raise your children in ethnic cliff, right? And the most importantly, your language and accents, you will going to have a better place for you to actually exercise your language, because this is the perfect way for them to create their safe zone to exercise their culture, right? Because by the status quo, they are being limited by white people in exercising their culture, maybe because of their accents and etc. It being said, it is inappropriate and disrespecting American just because they don't understand your language, right? That's why we do not want that under our side of the house. We want our children still have the freedom to actually speak their language. That's why it's becoming the interest of parents of color to raise and live their children in ethnically. But second case is why it will create better development for the community, right? First, the two most vulnerable actors here is that first parent of color and second is their children, right? First, let's talk about the likelihood of ethnic clave neighborhood, for example, Chinatown and Koreantown, right? The atmosphere or neighborhood there is molded perfectly like their origin country, that are exactly needed for this neighborhood. Why? Because living in a state where the people, for example, the whites, for example, are used the culture like liberal value or highly individualist and etc. It will highly likely for these people to forget their culture and such stuff, right? Because it will not going to be in line as the interest of parent of color, that we want to, you know, for them to living better standard, but also not forgetting where they come from and such stuff, because we have historical background that we need to be that we need to be hold open, right? But then, how do we going to prove that their educations will be better off in this public rather than in this public school, right? Because first, even if that you are going to give educations in this ethnic clave, for example, you will going to still have the same standard of education, because we have the same curriculum and education systems in the state that they are in, right? That's why they will still have the same education knowledge, like how in public school. But what will going to make difference? The nuance and the neighborhood of the people within that school is that, right? Where the people is full of their community, but they will going to feel like a family because they are able to, you know, to exercise their culture. Not only Halloween or New Year in public school, but also Chinese New Year and Chuseok and such stuff. Why then this is so important? Because the moment when you were able to actually exercise this as your culture, you were going to be much more focused in your academic, for examples, because you were not going to dealing with the operations that happen in public school, for example, because you were living in a state where you are so comfortable with, right? But trade-off, we're gonna take the bullet that even if that the society may think that we create the nuance of exclusive community, why we think that is still okay, right? Understand that living in an ethnic clave, you may have this feeling of no longer becoming minority, because the people in your neighborhood coming from the same background as you, right? They will going to have the same interest to help each other, because you know you have the same struggle. Compared to under the side of the house, the moment when you live around white people, for example, they will less likely to help you. Even more when you are coming from middle to lower class people, right? They will less likely to help you. That's why it will going to be so hard for you to grow within that neighborhood. That's why even if that is the case, we think that is still better off on the other side of the house. We propose these motions.
Yeah.
Judges, look, under the status quo right now, it will be so hard for this parent to actually choose to immigrate to another country, because how they feel that they have to improve their life to begin with, right? We already told you on how these people choose to immigrate from their original country to American, for example, and so on and so forth, because of how they think that they have no future or improvement for their life if they choose to stay on this country. But beforehand, right, there will be two things in my substantives. First of all, I would like to talk about the policy making, and second of all, I would like to talk about the likelihood that exists under the status quo. Beforehand, right? First of all, how then under our side of the house it will create a better policy making? Look, the moment these immigrants stick together with people who are the same ethnic with them, ladies and gentlemen, who have the same historical background, just to say they will share the same struggles, right, towards the people who are living together with them, towards Mexican, for example, or Chinese who are living in a Chinatown. They're sharing the same historical background. They share the same struggles that they're living in a foreign country, and so on and so forth. Like, look, the moment we are living in ethnic enclave where we are living in the same community, we share the same struggles, it will create a better policy making. Right? Why is that so? First of all, we told you the moment that they are living in one community, the government could hear your demand as a minority better, ladies and gentlemen. You, as an immigrant who are most likely a middle to lower classes, could voice out your demand even better because of how you have the same voices or demand with the people with the people under your community to begin with, right? Like how Mexican people, for example, demand for a better education towards their Mexican children children, and so on and so forth, right? That's to say, the government could provide a better education, for example, or a better infrastructure for those people who are living in the same community as minority to begin with, right? Look, opposition side of the house may told you that the status quo is already progressive, and so on and so forth. There's already movement or discrimination law, and etc. And your children should not be afraid if these children are going to the public school. But we said no, right? Those movements could not cater the problem that exists under the status quo. Look, discrimination is not only how you get harassed publicly, for example, or even you get harmed by the police in the street, and so on and so forth. But look, under the status quo, discrimination comes in a lot from. One of them is like how you could get mocked daily in school continuously, ladies and gentlemen. You could get bullying in the school every day just because you are Chinese, for example, and so on and so forth. There is a lot of bad narrative that these people of majority held upon you as a minority, you as a Chinese, you as Asian, or even you as Mexican to begin with, right? This is what we don't want under our side of the house, right? Judges notice out how the moment government seen us that we are so afraid to mingle with the majority, that how we as immigrant are so afraid to make our children to opt in into public school, is that the moment the government will see that there is actually a problem within the status quo, within the status quo to begin with, that this government need to fix, right? Like how under this, the reasons why under the status quo all the progressivity that exists under the status quo is not work anymore. Is because of how the government didn't see the urgency that they need to solve this problem as fast as possible. Look, if we are talking about a children's life, we are also talking about these children's future that they are going to live in this country forever, and so on and so forth, right? That's to say, what we want is a better policy making towards the welfare that these people of minority will get, and how they could actually protect their children. But second of all, right, what is the likelihood under our side of the house? Look, let's characterize predominantly white country look like. Those people who are majority, like how in United States America, for example, the majority is the white people, they are more likely tend to be oppressive towards people of minority, right? They are because of how they have more power than them. That's to say, they are more likely to discriminate them even more towards the people who are not the part of their community as a majority to begin with, right? Because they think, but moreover, even worse, they're most likely claiming the culture of minority, and so on and so forth, right? This is why we think it's so harmful to begin with. But second of all, even the likelihood of these children's development. Look, the moment these children who stick with the community, who have the same historical background, there is highly unlikely that these children would get oppressed at school because they opt in into school that are part of their community, and so on and so forth. If they are Chinese, they are going to opt in into people into the school that are majority Chinese in that, ladies and gentlemen, and so on and so forth. Look, the moment these children could do that is that the moment these children could no longer get oppressed at school continuously, right? They will feel that they have people who have the same background. They will feel that they have people who are actually understand them and their struggle, right? Opposition might say that these children will not be prepared upon their life living as minority in the future because of the exclusivity, and so on and so forth. We said no, right? Just because they live in an ethnic enclave doesn't necessarily mean that they didn't get the education that they needed in the future to prepare them for their future in life, right? They still get the education that they deserve. They still have the like how my first speaker already told you, they still get the same curriculum like what people in the public school do. What we want is to give the fullest protection towards our children, right? Because we believe that full protection will lead into a better living standard for our children. Under our side of the house, if these families stick with their community in an ethnic enclave, at least these people already living with a better job than what they have in their origin country. They already live in a better condition. They get welfare and so on and so forth. Those children get a better education, and so on and so forth, right? But why opening government need to win in this debate? First of all, we are the only team that told you on how these people will get a better living standard that are going to lead a better development for their children if they are living in an enclave situation, right? In order to give a better protection towards our children and family, we propose this motion.